This is a meeting of the Southfield Board of Education and the public for the purpose of conducting the school district business and is not to be considered as a community meeting. There are 2 opportunities for public participation during the meeting, and comments are limited to 3 minutes per individual. The board will listen to comments but may not respond during the meeting. If you wish to address the board, please submit a comment card immediately. Roll call. Talisha Rice, Board President.
Ashanti Bland, Board Vice President.
Yvette Ware Duvall, Board Secretary.
Darrell B. Joyce, Trustee.
Charles Hicks, Board Trustee.
Simone Payne, Student Representative.
Dr. Jennifer Green, Superintendent, and absent this evening, the Board Treasurer due to a prior engagement, as well as Trustee Smith Thomas due to family illness. And taking minutes this evening is Ms. Jolene Davis, our Chief of Talent Management, and of course our technical assistant is coming from no other than M1 Studios. Oh, is that our other baby?
Yep.
All right. Our other student board rep is walking in, so I'm going to help her get to her seat. And Board President, you carry on.
Thank you. Trustee Joyce, can we stand and you lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance?
Pledge allegiance.
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
We'll get started with board matters. First up is the Michigan Association of School Board Board of Directors Region 8. Candidates are up for vote. We have a ballot, and I will open it up to our board members for if we have a recommendation on a candidate for Region 8. Keep in mind, Region 8 covers Macomb County, Wayne County, and Oakland County. We've got 4 candidates. I can read the names off if we need, or if we have a recommendation coming forward.
Yeah.
I nominate Angie Smith from Farmington School District.
And Angie.
You have support?
I support.
Any discussion? Board Secretary?
Trustee Bland.
Yes.
Trustee Hicks.
Yes.
Trustee Joyce.
Yes.
Trustee Rice.
Yes.
Myself, yes. Unanimous.
Motion is carried. Next item on the board matters, Report 6042, adoption of our board goals. Any motion to open and approve?
So moved.
Support.
Discussion.
Through the chair.
Absolutely.
I believe that we may want to have a little bit more discussion regarding the board goals. I don't know how any other trustees feel. I think we have some ends to tie up and some things to potentially clear up. That would be my recommendation at this time, but I will digress to if anyone else has anything else to say.
Through the chair,
Absolutely.
I agree with Board Vice President. I believe that before we adopt goals, it needs to be clear and measurable, each goal, so that we can determine whether we met the goal, exceeded the goal, or possibly even didn't meet the goal. So I think we need to have that criteria aligned with the goals that are identified. Also, with the report as it's written, I believe that for Vice President's point, we need to make sure that we're aligned on who's actually executing these goals and responsible for making the vision reality. That's all I have.
Okay. Hearing that information, sounds like we want to ensure that we do our measurement or put our metrics in place along with our goals first. So the motion that we have on the floor, we can vote, or we can look to amend it to have inclusion of our performance metrics. And we can table. Okay. Hearing none, we will table our motion. Moving to our next board matter, Advocacy Institute. I understand it was conducted on January 23rd through the 25th, bringing some of our educational leaders together to talk about key policy and legislation. Do we have any board members that would have any report out from the Advocacy Institute?
Yes, pursuant to Board Policy 175, School Board Conferences, Conventions, and Workshops, the Board of Education recognizes the value of membership and attendance at conferences and meetings at the local, county, state, and national level. Attendance at the local, county, state, and national workshops and conferences are encouraged. Trustee Smith-Thomas, Dr. Green, and I participated online for the National School Board Association Advocacy Institute in 2022. The Advocacy Institute allows school boards from across the country to unite and align on critical issues needed in our districts, definitely from a national level. Our State School Board Association, as well as our district's national elected officials, shared with us how they advocate on our behalf, and they asked us for things that we need them to advocate for us. One of the activities that I participated in was a breakfast with Senators Debbie Stabenow and Gary Peters, as well as MASB, which is the Michigan Association of School Boards, as well as several board members from across the state. Senator Stabenow indicated to us that she's seeking additional funds for special ed. She has a program called Hallways to Health, where this initiative gives more supports for children via telehealth, mental health, as well as health centers throughout the state. She mentioned for school infrastructure, because several of our peers have mentioned many of their buildings in their districts require significant remediation and/or new buildings, and that she wanted she informed us that we as a collective should work with other districts to align and push our state house and state senate to provide more funding to support infrastructure improvement. But she also understood that, if that does not happen, or in parallel, that she will take our message to her peers to try to seek federal support to help address the infrastructure needs. She mentioned that ESSER funding, that she and other senators are looking to try to extend the deadline so that we have the ability to use funds past the current deadline. And some of the rationale was due to the impact of the worker shortage, supply chain, etc. Senator Peters is introducing a bill to fortify cybersecurity infrastructure that will provide additional supports for our schools. NSBA, which is the National School Board Association, provided an advocacy roadmap which includes the promotion of public school innovation and to oppose diversion of taxpayer funds to private schools. They've provided in full funding of individuals with disabilities. They are seeking full funding of individuals with disabilities under the Education Act, which is also known as IDEA. They want to get additional help for students from low-income families through increased funding for Title I. Because students from low-income families face numerous challenges that require enhanced resources and assistance. Things like ESEA as well as ESSA, which is Every Student Succeeds Act, provides necessary funding to local educational agencies and schools that have a high number or percentages of students from low-income families. Where this would totally benefit students within our district is that there will be additional dollars for math and literacy skills. They wanted to promote the digital equity and close the homework gap. Because as it was mentioned, it was more than 17 million school students lack adequate access to high-speed broadband and/or internet devices. So when they're in school and we provide Chromebooks, our students have access to internet. But when they go home, in some cases, they don't have the tools they need to be successful. A focus on teacher recruitment, retention, and professional training is also part of the roadmap, because we have a growing shortage of teachers, and the major problem in our society today due to COVID, the pandemic has intensified that. So a lot of teachers are retiring, we're not retaining them in the profession, and so there's efforts to try to fill that gap. In the SBA, as I mentioned earlier on, with the desire for additional funds for school infrastructure, they plan to support efforts to get funding needed to improve the safety of our school buildings, as well as design and include more technology and make them more modern to give us the things that we are so in desperate need here within our district. There's a focus on cybersecurity and student privacy. There's been a lot of ransomware and serious cyber attacks on schools to get data that will be used in improper mechanisms. So one of the things that we want to be able to do is to fortify the environments for our school districts so that we can reduce or mitigate the risk of having cyber attacks on data within our districts. Does anyone have any questions on anything that I mentioned thus far?
Through the chair.
Absolutely.
Trustee Hicks, was there any talk about providing funding for more mental health? You may have said this,
Yeah.
but I know we've talked about it a lot, so I was just wondering.
So that would fall under the seeking of additional funds for both ESSER as well as ESSA, that they're championing on our behalf, one, extending for the learning loss and the issues that are arrived due to mental illness as a direct correlation between COVID. So our leaders through NSBA as well as our state leadership, and our national leadership through Gary Peters and Debbie Stevenow are seeking additional funds to support via telehealth, mental health, and other methods. Any additional questions?
Through the chair.
Absolutely.
And you may have mentioned this as well, but just to ask for our community, is there anything that our stakeholders and parents and/or community can do to support these efforts?
Absolutely. One thing that's near and dear to me is that, of course, being an alum of this fine district, a lot of the buildings are in the same shape as they were when I was a student. And that's not good. So one of the things that parents can do is definitely write our leadership, whether it be in the House of Representatives or the State Senate, seeking their support so that we can get additional funding from the state and the federal to help with those remediation tasks that we are so desperately in need of.
Through the chair.
That's agree.
In tandem with what Trustee Hicks shared, we cannot tell parents what to say, but we can definitely provide them with the information of who represents them both locally, regionally, as well as nationally. So one thing that we're committed to do is post that information on our district webpage so that our parents can have easy access to know who those individuals are in which they can contact to support those initiatives that were lifted.
Thank you, Dr. Gray.
And before I close, Dr. Green, is there anything that I didn't lift that we?
No, you handled the federal, and I'm coming behind you with the state level, so
Okay.
perfect tag team.
So that concludes my report. Thank you.
Thank you, Trustee Hicks. Next up, Head Start Policy Council report.
I attended the Tuesday, February 1st Policy Council meeting. It was led by Sherry Jones. Director Hill was not present for the report out, but it went smoothly. A couple of things that I thought were important for us to note are that we have been asked to provide some in-kind services. They are still in need. So I have definitely volunteered to do that, waiting on Director Hill to get me information regarding a committee that she would need some board representation from. Also, they were encouraged to come and hear and join our board meetings so that the parents of our busy Head Start children will know what's going on in the community. And I thought that was very uplifting, considering, you know, they're the smallest of us. And their parents need to know some of this information because we do talk about resources that we provide to the community at our board meetings. Other than that, they have, they did state that they were able to get some substitutes for some classrooms, which I thought was very encouraging considering what we're going through with a national teacher shortage. And other than that, things are rolling along as planned with our Head Start and Bussey Center. Of course, they've been plagued with the remnants of COVID-19, especially considering our babies put everything in their mouths. I mean, there's no way around it. And so they are just dealing with it day by day. So I was really encouraged by the fortitude of the people that work in our Head Start Center and Bussey Center. If anyone has any questions, please feel free.
Look forward to receiving the information on the in-kind service. So. No. Yeah. If it would behoove the board, might we move the student board representatives up to give their report out before our next board matter?
I have no problem with that.
Any objection?
No objection.
Okay. Damon Page, might you want to be first up with your student board report?
With former Dean Dean Williams and Ms. Levin's departure from the U, we have begun the new transition to a new interim administration and our new high school counselor who started a few weeks ago. Replacing Ms. Levin's seat in the counselor's office is Ms. Monique Green, who will advise students with last names starting K through Z. Serving in new interim administrative roles are Ms. Moss, who has been working hard alongside with interim Dean Patton to lead the school in the absence of former Dean Williams. Interim Dean Patton and interim Assistant Dean Moss have been working together to ensure that the needs of staff and students are met. After 2 weeks of virtual learning we underwent due to the rise of COVID-19, students returned for midterm exams from January 17th through the 20th, beginning an end to the first semester. Before switching over to second semester matters, I would like to take this time to congratulate Ms. Petru, who has earned UHSA the College Board AP Computer Science Female Diversity Award for expanding young women's access to AP Computer Science principles. I would also like to congratulate our novice and varsity debate teams and Coach Menadeo for winning the Detroit Urban Debate League December debates. Moving on with the start of second semester, February 4th, which concluded our virtual Fridays, which will be bringing us back to a 5-day, fully in-person school schedule. Starting off February, the National Weather Service issued a winter storm warning for parts of Michigan as we were expected to receive 8 to 14 inches of snow. As a result, SPS underwent 2 snow days on February 2nd and 3rd. This was a smart decision as many accidents and injuries were avoided and the safety of our school's community was ensured, with everyone in the comfort of their own homes. With the start of second semester, all of our clubs and organizations are up and running. As February marks Black History Month, many organizations have incorporated Black celebration into their activities. Our National Honor Society coordinated a virtual HBCU experience on February 4th by joining our current students with U alumni that attend HBCUs. In addition to the meeting, the Black History Month Committee of NHS has also ordered weekly announcements every Friday highlighting important Black figures. Our We Accept You Club is also hosting activities on February 15th to highlight queer Black icons and their contributions to the world. Lastly, yearbooks are on sale and have almost sold out. With the documentations of these core memories in such high demand, it is clear that this year has been very prosperous and productive for the youth. I, along with the rest of the students and staff, are excited to see what the second semester and remaining months of school will bring us.
Thank you. Divinity Davis from Southfield High School, A&T.
The week of January 17th were the midterm final exams. The following Monday, we begin our second semester of the school year.
Does she need a mic?
Unfortunately, A&T had to go remote learning that Thursday, January 27th.
Ms. Payne, if you don't mind sitting here for a second, so that they can hear you on the microphone.
Oh, thank you. The week of January 17th.
The week of January 17th were our midterm final exams. The following Monday began our second semester of the school year. Unfortunately, A&T had to go to virtual learning that Thursday, January 27th, due to heating problems in the building. We remained virtual the following week as well, in which we received 2 snow days due to Michigan's hazardous road conditions. Seeing as though February 7th was our first day really back in the building since before Christmas, there's not really much to report, because there was nothing going on in the building. But the sports currently in session are the girls basketball, boys basketball, bowling, and competition cheer. Our midwinter break is upcoming the week of February 21st. I would also like to add that our student council is working diligently to provide our seniors with information about things such as prom, graduation, and other senior festivities that are upcoming.
Okay.
Thank you to both of our student board representatives. We know that this is late in the evening, so you can either feel free to stick around or you can leave for the evening. Some of you may have homework or something.
Board President, if I may.
Yep.
Both of the young ladies have a gift box in front of them this evening. They were not able to be present during our January meeting, and in recognition of school board appreciation, we wanted to recognize our student board reps as well. So that is a gift on behalf of the district to help you in your planning and transition to your post-secondary careers. So.
Thank you very much. We'll revert back to board matters, and I think next up is our area council PTA report.
I'll report on the area council meeting that was held last Thursday, February 3rd. During that time, Dr. Green did uncover and discuss our missions and our visions as we are still cultivating and making sure that we fine-tune it. We're also going to stay abreast of the education landscape with our local, state, and federal levels so that we can make sure that our parents that are involved and can move our district forward with their help. There is also an invitation to join our district level committees for our capital bond that we will be moving forward on. So that is out there with the PTA to make sure that they can communicate that effectively through their schools. Founders Day celebration. The theme this year is Southfield Public Schools Cares for the Whole Child. I do ask, as Andrea Wright is the chair, the president for the area council meeting, I do ask that we lend her a hand in wrapping our arms around this virtual process that she's going to be putting together and programming to make sure that we are in support of the theme this year. It's very important that we continue. I believe this is the 100th year?
Yes.
Anniversary.
Okay, 100th
Centennial
anniversary for
anniversary.
Founders Day celebration. So reach out to Andrea in support of her. Clarification regarding public participation at board meetings was also discussed, and expanding PTA opportunities based on contact with your school leaders. That's all I have for my report.
Board President, if I may just add, relative to the public participation piece, we stream our meetings live via YouTube, and there was a misunderstanding with some of our stakeholders that if they typed in the comments during the YouTube channel or on the YouTube channel, that it would come directly to us. So the clarification was if they wish to submit public participation in advance, to forward that to board secretary, and then we would report out on their question or concern.
Absolutely. Any questions from the board? Okay, we will move along. The next on our agenda is the capital bond campaign informational. We have someone from Miller Canfield here to present a proposal on our capital improvement bond.
We actually have two, Jim Crowley. Board President, if I may, we have joining us this evening Mr. James, but affectionately known as Jim Crowley, and Mr. Sean Rucker, you may recall, was with us at our last meeting for the replacement operating millage. Our familiar face of Amanda Van Duzen, she is transitioning into soft retirement, and said that we were in capable hands with these two gentlemen. So we trust her, and therefore we trust them. So welcome this evening, gentlemen. Do you need if you could pull up their presentation and.
Good evening, board.
Good
I'm
evening.
Jim Crowley. We got my colleague Sean Rucker. We're attorneys. We practice in our school law group at Miller Canfield. Basically in school finance, do a lot of bond work with schools. This evening, we wanted to give you a primer tutorial of the rules that apply to school districts when they start down the path of issuing bonds. And I just want to give you kind of an overview of some of the rules that are going to apply to this, and then spend some time going through the calendar. It's my understanding that you may be targeting an election in November, so we'll look at what a calendar looks for that. So with our other clients, the recent bond deals, I just wanted to kind of give you an idea of what we're seeing out there in the bond world with schools around the state. Our client base is mostly in Southeast Michigan. We do have some clients on the west side of the state, but it's primarily the Tri-County area, Genesee, also maybe a little Washtenaw. So we think that obviously the need for capital improvements still remains strong. As you mentioned, your buildings need a lot of work, a lot of older buildings in this community. With the reduction in students, we're not seeing so much new space as we're seeing renovation, a lot of technology, a lot of new buses. We're seeing a ton of obviously health and safety with the COVID stuff. And we're back to focus on security with the recent events. Lots of stuff, interesting things being done with energy conservation. We're seeing a whole new slew of better energy conservation solutions and systems. We're also seeing solar pop up at schools. We had a school out in the Flint area that we helped them put a whole they put solar panels on each one of their buildings. Some were up mounted on the roof, some were on the ground. And it really worked out to be a neat project. So what we're seeing in there with after the recession, we continue to see positive property tax growth, which is good for the repayment of bonds. It keeps the millage rate lower and declining. And we're also seeing a lot of schools going for larger issues and then issuing them in series so that you cover your needs over a longer period of time, maybe a 5 to 10 to 15 year period where you issue them over either a 2 or 3 series over a time. And that works particularly well with technology. So you're doing your technology needs over and you cover it for a longer period of time. So we see a lot, and almost every deal that we're working on now kind of follows that model. So we can only borrow money as a school district as it's set forth in the school code. And I just listed these are all the different ways that a school district can borrow money. And the two most common are the ones on the left, the sinking fund, which requires a voter approval. You can go up to 3 mills. And that's a pay-as-you-go. You levy mills every year, and you spend them on projects. The second one, also popular, is requiring voter approval, is our voted bonds, which we're going to focus on tonight. So that's where you get voter approval for the bonds, and you do your projects, and then you pay the bonds back like your home mortgage over a number of years. The rest of them are just for special type of things, and those are typically paid out of your general fund on that. So we're going to focus tonight on what we're looking at doing is asking the voters to approve a bond issue. And if we get a voter approval, that allows the school district to levy an unlimited tax levy, specifically to repay the bonds. So these bonds will not be paid out of your general fund. They will be paid with a separate levy. These bonds, you're a governmental entity, and we can issue these bonds on a tax-exempt basis, so it's a lower interest rate to the taxpayers, which is very good. School bonds in Michigan are also eligible to be qualified with the State of Michigan program. It's a school bond loan program. It's a constitutional program that was instituted to help school districts issue bonds. And we're going to talk about a little bit about that so you understand that, because that's going to be a decision that's going to need to be made whether you qualify your bonds or not. There are some limitations that wouldn't be applicable to you, and we also have some requirements through the Department of the Treasury that your bond counsel would take care of on that. So just talk about what we can and can't do with bonds. Basically, we can only use bond proceeds to purchase capital assets. And the accountants tell us that a capital asset is any asset with a useful life greater than 1 year, generally. We can't do repairs, we can't do maintenance. One of the big problems we have with the current statute is that the definition of technology is light years out of date. They talk about floppy disks and diskettes, and it just, unfortunately, it just doesn't fit what we do, the technology with schools today, and the software licenses and the cloud applications, and it's unfortunate. So our hands are kind of tied in that regard with the software part of it. But the hardware part of it is still fine. Maybe our legislature will fix that. We also have to be cognizant of the useful life. We can't issue the bonds longer than the useful life of the improvements. This typically, well, only really becomes an issue if you get heavy into technology type stuff that would have a shorter life than your building improvements. So your financial advisor will take care of that. But that would affect how quickly you pay back the bonds, and obviously your millage rate. So it's kind of a structuring issue that you might run into. Just throw this up here in the school code, section 1351 is the section that tells you what you can and can't do. We put that into layman terms here for you. And this is just kind of a layman's type summary of what you can and can't do, or what you can allowable use of bond proceeds. So we can build new buildings, we can renovate buildings, remodel buildings, we can do anything energy conservation, we can buy land, we can do site developments, which anything we do to the land, which would be landscaping, parking lots, sidewalks. We can improve our athletic facilities. We can improve our playgrounds. We can pay all the fees related to the issuance of the bonds and all the project costs. The only vehicles we can buy are buses. We can do furnishings and equipment. And again, we have technology, which again is hardware is okay, the software, the statute is deficient in that regard. So this is the things we can't do with bond proceeds. Oops, not too far. So again, as we mentioned, we can't do repairs and maintenance. We can't do any kind of operational costs, which includes any kind of salaries for employees. As I mentioned, we can only buy buses. We can't buy any other vehicles that go on the road. We can buy vehicles like lawnmowers and maintenance type things that wouldn't necessarily be on the road. We can't do uniforms. Sorry to the band and the football team. No textbooks. And then again, we have these issues with software that we have, and then we can't do anything with maintenance or computer training. That's kind of the no-nos in the bond proceeds world. So I'm just going to touch on the school bond loan fund. It's a really nice program the state offers, but you have to qualify your bonds through this program. There's two advantages. It's to number one, if you qualify your bonds through this program, the state is going to guarantee your bonds. If for some reason you don't pay these bonds, the state's going to step in and pay them. So what that does is it allows you to sell these bonds with the state's credit rating. The state right now has a AA credit rating, which I think is higher than the school districts. So that's a
an
nice
A1.
thing.
We have an A1.
A1, okay, yeah. So the state has a higher credit rating. The second part of it is a little hard to explain, but what happens is that the program puts a cap on your millage. And the cap starts at 7, and it could be as high as 13 mils, but there's a formula to figure that out. But whatever the cap is determined to be, you're capped on your debt millage, and if you have more mills required to pay your debt, the state loans you that money. And then at some point, as your property values go up and your debt comes down, you'll repay the state. So in effect, what it does is it levels out your debt payments. So instead of having high and then low, you get more of a level payment on that. And as you get down this in the process, your financial advisor will demonstrate how this works with the numbers. It's easier to see when you have the numbers in front of you and how this works. The downside of going through the programs, you have to qualify your bonds with the state of Michigan. So they review all your projects, which I think is a good thing. It really gets you, I think it's a process that gets you organized ahead of time. They will look at whether you need to, if you're adding additional space, they want to know that you have the capacity for that. They'll look at some of your cost per square foot for construction, and then they'll look at some of your student counts. So they kind of kick the tires to make sure all the projects are bond eligible projects, and they kind of just review your whole project. And they do this process in an application that you submit to them, and they go building by building for it. So, and it just adds some time to the issuance calendar, which we'll talk about in a minute. I'm not going to spend any time on this because we're going to go to the calendar on how that works. This is the loan mechanism I mentioned. It's the smoothing out when you're qualified. And again, your financial advisor, when you start down the road on this, will explain how this works. So I put together what we call election timetable. And I'm assuming the bond election would be this November, which is the midterm election, November 8, 2022. And we kind of work backwards to develop this. So since 2005, school districts haven't run their own elections. The county runs your election now. So all you have to do is to notify the county that you want something on the ballot. And in this case, it's a bond proposal. That has to be submitted to the Oakland County Clerk at no later than 4 p.m. on the 12th Tuesday prior to the election. So that gets us to August 16th. Prior to that, the board has to approve submitting that to the clerk. And so I found it looks like you have a regular scheduled meeting on August 9th. So the next backing up, we have the Treasury approval in there. Treasury requires an application be submitted to it. We have a meeting with them, and then the board has to approve that application, and then we submit it to Treasury. And Treasury needs 30 days. So I've got blanks on the 2 dates there because I've looked back and it doesn't look like you have a regularly scheduled July meeting, but I know you often do have meetings in July. So what we need to complete this is to figure out when the board action would be. We would need board action in late June or early July, like before July 9th. And once you set that date, then we call Treasury and get a meeting with Treasury at any time prior to the board meeting. Usually no later than a couple days prior to that. And then if we move up from February, where we're at now, through the Treasury meeting, your design professionals would put together the project list. Obviously, the board would approve that and review that and narrow down to what you wanted to have as your bond projects that would go into that application in that Treasury meeting. there any questions on the timetable?
Through the chair, not necessarily a question, but if you could re-emphasize the importance of that late June, early July meeting with the board because of the timing with Treasury. We discussed the possibility of having it no later than the end of June due to all other school districts trying to get those dates with the Department of Treasury. It's not as simple as calling. So if you could just expound on that a little bit.
Yeah, so we should get to Treasury fairly quickly to get on their schedule for our meeting. November typically is a popular date for school bonds, so the Treasury schedule will get full up pretty quickly. So the sooner we know, the more choice of dates we'll have for our meeting. So, yeah, so it's just, I think it's important to nail that down if we're going to move forward.
So through the chair,
Trustee Hicks?
the question that I have is still in the pandemic. This is the happy path to get, I'm sorry. This is a happy path to get us to backing into the election in November. Should we be thinking some contingency to pull some of these dates in sooner to make sure that we can align and hit our dates? Because we don't want to be at risk that offices are closed or.
Yeah, so this schedule is pretty good. That August 9th meeting is well before the August 16th, so I like that. It's not, today was the due date for the May election. So, and I had a board meeting last night where they hand-delivered it today. So you've got August 9th, I'm very comfortable with that. In the county, you know, unless the catastrophe happened, that they should be open on that date. And we have some good time. And Treasury approval, really, so if we move back, the concern I have is the June and July. If you could go into your June board meeting, the regularly scheduled one, to move it back, but then the design professionals need time, so you're taking time away from them. So we need to talk to them as a departmental and find out if we could go to June for that board meeting, board action. You could go to your June regular meeting, which is the second Tuesday, June.
The last meeting in June.
The special meeting. So
Yeah.
we have our regular meetings on the second Tuesday and a special meeting or working session on the fourth Tuesday.
Yeah,
So
so
the fourth Tuesday may be
Yeah,
the
either the
ideal.
one, that would work, yeah. So if that went, the board action went to the second meeting in June, then we have a lot of choice on our dates for Treasury in June. Yeah.
So Dr. Green, I guess, and this may be through our design professionals, will a project manager be aligned with us to keep us on target for hitting these dates?
We already have them queued and ready to go.
Okay. And do we need to have any formal action for having a July meeting? Because we typically don't.
Well, we may or may not need that July meeting if indeed we meet the deadline in June.
Gotcha.
So that would be multiple options for us to consider.
Okay. Thank you.
Mr. Crowley, the February through June timeline, there's a number of multiple actions that need to occur between that next several months. Are there time durations for each of these activities to help us with planning? It just kind of looks like we've got a group of things to do between now and June.
Yeah, so that list is everything that needs to be in the application that we take to Treasury. So,
So that is primarily the executive team. Will be carrying that lift in tandem with the project manager, or also known as the owner's rep, along with the other individuals that we would work with. Our bond counsel, of course, the gentleman here, along with our financial representatives, and currently that is PFM. So the executive team will be quite busy for the next 6 months of our life.
Yeah.
so the construction manager, owner's rep, basically takes ownership in preparing that. And they, as bond counsel, we would put together the BAT language. Mm-hmm. Your financial consultant would put together the financial stuff. The bond projects will, however you guys decide.
And we, trustees, if I can recall the fiscal and financial facilities audit that we did in 2012, then we had them come back in 2018-19 for an update. So we have a good foundation. We would add to that, walked every building with a fine-tooth comb. We actually had a meeting with Barton Mallow earlier today. So a lot of this work is already started behind the scenes in preparation to present it to you. We're not starting from scratch on any of these items listed here this evening.
I think one of the other questions I might have is, somewhere in your deck, you talked about the home values and the interest rate. Most of the home values in our city has gone up during the pandemic, and whereas our interest rate might have been around 2%, is now hovering around 4%. How does that impact the capital improvement bond? Because I know we were especially looking for it to be low, but we've had some fluctuation during the pandemic.
Yeah. So, you all see the news, inflation's up, and, the Fed's threatening to raise interest rates. By all signs, interest rates are going to increase. But we're still in a very, very low interest rate environment, especially for tax-exempt bonds. So we're still in historically low rates. So we still feel pretty good about it, that they are going up. And so when the rates go up, obviously it's going to take more mills to pay off the bonds. And on property values, when property values go up, the mills go down. So between those two, maybe there's I don't know. It's hopefully, values go up and interest rates stabilize. So keep our fingers crossed.
Which is one of the reasons that we discussed moving forward for the November election for the ballot. If we wait to May or August of next year, then we may be subject to significantly higher interest rates.
Trustees, any other?
Yeah, I have-
Joyce?
Yeah, to the board. So I'm aware of the fact, and I know we are too, that there's no repairs and no maintenance from the proceeds. But where I'm stuck at is in renovations. Renovations. So the term renovations, because of the fact that we have a lot of problems in our schools. So if there's no repairs and no maintenance, then where does that leave us with renovations? I mean, because-
Replacement,
So it would be replacement.
it would be replacement.
Okay.
Yeah, and
Windows.
renovations are allowed. You can remodel, renovate. Repair
replace.
is, we do a lot of repair and renovation.
That's what I'm saying.
You just
That's a
replace
lot
it,
of-
correct, yeah.
Yeah, there's a lot of repair and renovations.
Yeah.
But here, we understand that there's no repairs and no maintenance. But in renovations, there's a lot of repair. So does that put us in a position that we're not doing any repairs? We're replacing.
You're renovating, replacing.
Right,
Renovate,
so,
okay.
Board President, if I may,
Dr. Green.
through Chair. So if we think about our HVAC systems, for example, we don't want to repair a system that is antiquated, 30 years old, and we can't get parts for those. We would look to replace those items. And because of the life expectancy of a new HVAC system, it would qualify. The same thing with windows, doors, et cetera. We wouldn't want to make repairs on something that is already outlived its life expectancy.
Okay.
Such as a roof, if I could use that as an example. We wouldn't want to do patchwork on a roof. We could, it would qualify, but it would make better sense for us to replace the entire roof versus putting a repair on a small parcel of the roof.
Yeah, because my concern is I've been on the board for 8 years, and all we've been doing is Band-Aid.
I know.
And so it's just good to know that we're getting ready to now go into replacing instead of just continuing.
We want to rip off the Band-Aid and do the surgery
I'm
necessary.
trying to tell you.
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
Thank you, Trustee Joyce. One other question, Mr. Collins. We've kind of been talking about having a capital bond committee. How has a committee been used in the past in helping with pulling everything together to walk through the process?
Yeah, each school does it a little differently. I think a common model for districts is to start with your giant wish list, and then gather that from buildings and your stakeholders, and then community, and then obviously the list you're going to get is going to be way more than anybody could ever afford.
Right.
And then you start narrowing that down, focusing on what your needs are. I've seen districts do it. You do a critical needs, the next critical, and then your wish list. And you can there's all different ways to do it. But I think it's important to have your stakeholders, your parents, your community involved in having a say in what they want in your buildings, what they want to see for their kids.
Through the chair.
Dr. Green?
We have also started this process whereby we put out the thought exchange for our community to tell them, to ask our community what they wish to see in a 21st century school or school district. We also, through Barton Mallow, would subcontract with someone who specializes in this type of work. So they would set up our focus groups. They would script out all of the things that need to occur between the time the board approves it and the time we go to the ballot. That's their area of expertise, and they would walk us chapter and verse through all of that.
Board trustees, any further inquiry? Okay. Thank you, Jim. Thank you, Sean.
I just mentioned one last thing. It's not time for this, but we will talk about the Campaign Finance Act if you decide to go down this road, and more than happy to come out and give another talk to the board and your administration about the rules. It's important, these rules. So,
Yeah.
In
Thank
case
you. Good
any
luck.
of us forgot the ones from the replacement operating millage.
Thank you.
Fresh in
Thank
our
you.
mind.
Thank you,
Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you.
We'll move to the reporter superintendent.
Thank you, Board President. And to pick up where Trustee Hicks left off, we did attend the Advocacy Institute, and that is followed up with some exciting things happening here at the state level. On tomorrow, the governor will unveil her executive budget recommendations. I have been privy to see much of what was in the budget, but just to give you some overall perspective as to what we may expect. They are anticipating a $435 per pupil increase across the board. While that constitutes a 5% increase, I do want to caution us because the rate of the cost of living increases over time is probably at 7.5% right now. So while we see the 5% and we get excited because so often we don't get anything, it is still lower than what the cost of living increase is. So I want us to be mindful and be considerate and continue to be good stewards of all of our money. This, however, would be a $580 million investment into the foundation allowance at the state level, which aligns with some of the work of the SFRC. You may recall several years ago, the Finance Committee pulled together a lot of work on what it would take to educate children in the state of Michigan. And of course, that was pre-pandemic, so we didn't have a lot of the other components that we need to add to that. That being said, there is an additional $222 million being projected for, or being proposed for at-risk students, another $150 million for special education, and an additional 5% increase for our English language learners. $150 million for tools for teachers to support their wellness, $120 million to increase funding for school-based mental health professionals, and another $81 million to support mental health-based services within our schools. Fortunately, pre-pandemic, we did partner with Ascension, CNS, and Easter Seals. We still have those strong partnerships. This would add to that, and we are looking forward to adding those services. We've received a number of calls as of late from our families, both current as well as those that have graduated from our district in need of services. And we continue to support all of our families in the community, which is why we are focusing on becoming a community schools district, because it takes the whole family and the whole child, as you mentioned, Madam Secretary, to ensure that our students are successful. GSRP, which is our Great Start Readiness Program, is expected to see a $21 million increase, and there is another $30 million in startup grants. So We don't have all the details there, but I am pleased to say that they are also looking at some retention funds coming directly from the state for our teachers. So I know we see a lot of people tired and looking to retire and go into other professions. I do ask that they hold on just for a moment, if they can, to get a second wind when they see some of the proposed language that may be an incentive for them to stay and help to transition and onboard some of our new teachers that need their expertise as we bring them on to educate our young people. There is another $1 billion deposit being proposed for school facility fund and annual investments of $170 million through the fiscal year of '28. So again, that is scheduled to be released on tomorrow at approximately 12 noon. We look forward to all of the details, and we look forward to the collaborative relationship on both sides of the aisle to get this budget passed for the 2022 fiscal year 23 school year. So we're excited about that work. Moving to the Oakland County Health Department, I did have my weekly meeting with them today. You've heard a lot in the news relative to the mask mandate. The Oakland County Health Department reiterated that they are staying the course with the mask mandate. When they implemented the mask mandate, they were looking for less than 100 positive cases per 100,000, and they said as of today, we're still at 538 per 100,000. So we still have a ways to go. We are making progress though, and Ms. Davis, if you can pull up the photo that we dropped on the desktop there. I did want to acknowledge that one, yes please. A donation that we received today, and given that the Oakland County Health Department is moving forward with the mask mandate, Chief Menifee, you have to step up, because this donation came from the Detroit Fire Department, whereby we have 72,000 masks that were donated to Vandenberg. So thank you to Mr. Harris for that donation. And Principal Monica Eason is holding on to them tightly, so we will try to get them from her in the coming days. But we're grateful to keep our young people and our staff protected. There's some other monies available. There's a Michigan State Police Safety Grant. It is a competitive grant. We will apply for that grant. Interestingly enough, it doesn't allow you to use those grant dollars for an assessment, but you can purchase things. It's difficult to purchase things if you don't know what's absolutely necessary. There's a lot of conversation happening now throughout the county relative to the kick plates on the doors that were in our neighboring district that suffered the great loss most recently. Well, there's debate as to which ones are a fire hazard and which ones are not a fire hazard. So we have to lean into the experts with all decisions we make, and we have to ensure that we're data-driven and everything is research-based and scientifically proven, because our fire department does not support a certain type of kick plate. However, they have indicated to us that we need to have numeric identifiers lower on our doors, because fire rises, smoke rises, and if they come out and they have to identify a classroom, they can't see the number on the door. So there are a lot of things that we as educators, you as other business professionals may not consider, which is why we are so fortunate to have the positive relationship that we have with Homeland Security, with our fire department, as well as our police departments. So we will continue that work as we move forward. There is also another opportunity for us to garner $250,000 on the work that we're doing with NAF, our NAF academies, specifically for that of the continuation of supporting those interested in going to the healthcare professions, recognizing that they too have a labor shortage. So that came across our desk earlier today, and we will continue to apply for everything that is available and that we qualify for along the process. I was so happy to hear the news that Trustee Hicks shared relative to the ESSER dollars, because all of those things are time bound. And if we don't spend them within that time frame, it goes back to the federal government. Another thing that you may have seen in our last audit from fiscal year 21, and Paul Bryant will be coming out to speak with us at the next meeting, is that we weren't able to use all of the grant dollars we received for that exact reason. And we have what is called PMP. We have so much money that we have to set aside for other entities that may have a child living in Southfield attending their school within a 20-mile radius. The irony of that is, if they don't spend those dollars, Southfield Public Schools can't recapture them. They have to go back to the federal government. So it's a double-edged sword. I've been working with the Congresswoman's office on that piece, and we'll be working on some other pieces as well to try to navigate that terrain, because it doesn't make sense to send any monies back that can help the children within our community as a whole. Any questions on those two pieces before we move to the next? Okay. If there are no questions on that, I'd ask Ms. Venable, who's our Executive Director of Operations, to come to the podium and speak to us regarding the HVAC issues that we've had in the district, what we've done to remedy them to date, and then, of course, what we need to do moving forward. And you can take down that beautiful photo.
Sure. Good evening, Honorable Board. Just to
evening.
give you an update on the heating and ventilation. One, the issues that we grappled with at Southfield High School for Arts and Technology. The conversation tonight underscores the reasoning why we need new equipment. The high school at some point switched into cooling throughout the day. And at one point, the system just failed in some of the classrooms. We have unit ventilators there. We made some repairs. And during the time that the high school was remote last week, we were able to get in some professional services. A mechanical firm came in, an air balancing company was able to come and assess our equipment, as well as some other mechanical engineers to walk the building. Essentially, we found that the equipment is aged, right? We've all talked tonight about we're beyond our useful life for many of our major systems: roofing, HVAC, windows, doors. In this instance, the problem is compounded at A&T in that we have 5 different systems of controls in the building that are just at various age of disrepair, right? And just age of equipment. We have Train, we have Siemens. So these are all controls that controls when heating and cooling kicks in our buildings. There's 5 different systems in the building, and I imagine it's because we also have various age of build for the school. Our air handler system is original build. It's 1967. Some of the unit ventilators that are in the classrooms are original build, 1967. What we are planning to do is to do a much more thorough assessment of our mechanical systems to create a pathway for moving forward. But the assessments that was done last week was just an eye-opener that we need some major system overhaul. We talked about replacements, that we're looking forward to that. Now, what we've done hasn't necessarily taken us out of the woods. I imagine that we'll continue to grapple with heating concerns, especially if our temperatures continue to dip as low as they have been over the past 3 weeks. We have, at University High School, we had to replace fan motors on unit ventilators. The unit ventilator heats to about 70 to 80 degrees, but there's nothing blowing. So the room may feel cool, and so we've replaced fans, original fan units to the system. McIntyre, Adler, the boiler. I've been lucky enough to restart boilers for the past 2 weeks at 4:30 a.m. because we get an alarm, the boiler just shuts off. The boiler is dated 1990. The boilers at A&T are dated 1994, 1995. And if not necessarily maintained over those years, right, we're going to have some problems now. So our intent is to move forward with that deeper dive of an assessment of our equipment, and then we'll plan for a path moving forward.
Mr. Venable, thank you for bringing the information forward. One of the questions that I have is that I know we're kind of going down the path for replacement or a capital improvement bond that will take us through November of this year for just to get to the election. And I think the question is, for the things that we have now or the things that we know about, I understand you guys are going to do another assessment and bring a path forward. How might we tackle some of the things now, because we've got the remainder of this school semester, and then we've got the start of the next school semester, which will take us into early part of the winter at the end of the year. So I guess my question is, how might we take a look at some things that we can do in the interim as we still continue down this parallel path for the capital improvement bond?
Sure. So one, we're going to start with A&T. We have a system unit ventilators that are suspended in the ceiling that have been in disrepair for, I'm told, 2 to 3 years. They don't work. And so the plan there is to get competitive bids on replacing those systems because we need it. And we also need to reposition them, not suspend them in the ceiling, but have them on the floor, right? Because heat rises. Otherwise, as it is now, it's not designed to be successful. We will never completely heat that corridor with the unit suspended in the ceilings. You'll see that. You'll see that competitive process, right? We have chillers that are down, so spring is coming, and I was like, I hate to see it coming because I know that where we do have air conditioning or cooling systems in place, they're also in a state of failure. And so we're planning to put it out to bid. We'll do piece by piece what we can do with the remaining dollars of our capital improvement fund.
So, Madam Chair, if I may, just to put things in perspective, the recent HVAC upgrades having been installed at Bernie cost us slightly over $5 million. The comprehensive high school is 3 times or more the size of Bernie. So if you do a comparison, that's $15+ million for a complete overhaul. We have approximately $1.5 million left in our capital improvement. So we couldn't put a dent in what was needed for a complete replacement. That being said, while Ms. Venable focused on that of Southfield A&T, I think it's important that our community know we're not looking to make that significant investment in the current Lathrop campus because I've been quite vocal, as have many of you, that that building is in need of replacement, if you will, and consideration of raising that entire campus. We only have a finite number of dollars to spend, and we have to be very intentional in how we spend those dollars. We don't want to put them into a facility that we are eventually going to replace that facility. Now, we do want our children to be warm. We want them to be cool when it's hot outside. We've provided some temporary units, and we still have some temporary units held in abeyance in your office in the event that we have some unforeseeable issues surface. The $5 million that you were gracious enough to grant us would cover our 4 standalone elementary schools for HVAC replacement. So those are things that we already have in progress. They go out for bid, we go through the motions, and we start the work, as much of it as we can get done over the summer. They too are subject, or the construction companies are also subject to labor shortages and supply chain issues. So while we had hoped to get a lot of the work done last year, when the construction executive order was lifted, we were still at the mercy of the supply chain issue. I believe that with one of the controllers at Bernie, we're still waiting on the new replacement switch. Fortunately, the engineers were able to create something for temporary usage. If we were dependent on that switch, Bernie would still be offline, and we're in February. So that's how significant and strategic, how significant the issue is and how strategic we are having to be in scheduling out this work as we move forward.
Through the chair.
Trustee Bland?
Well, of course, first I want to say thank you, Ms. Venable. I've run into you on many an occasion since you've been with this district on Sundays, Saturdays, in the buildings, making sure things are locked up, making sure things are fixed. I believe myself, Trustee Hicks, Trustee Wardaball were on a call for the power hour. Many of our parents were asking about the timing in which they find out when the school is going to be closed because of these HVAC situations. So my question is more coming from a community standpoint of what is the process for our building administrator? I heard you say that at 4:30 an alarm goes off for the boilers in certain schools. So what is the expectation for our community in timing? Of course, some people can't always get childcare if it's going to be canceled, so I'm trying to understand and trying to give clarity to the community for how does that work? Does the building administration notify you or Dr. Green that things are down when they walk the halls at 6 in the morning? Can you just lend some type of help to us so we understand how that works?
Absolutely. We actually had this discussion today just to reassure everyone knows their role. So one, I want to just tell you about our security system. So our boilers, our doors, our freezers, our refrigerators are all on controls. The majority, let me say that, the majority of our building on controls.
Okay.
In that if there's an alarm, if there's a failure, equipment failure, our security company either calls myself or our assistant director in facilities. And then we respond by calling the next person on the call tree to actually get up and respond. Because I live in I'm a resident of Lathrop Village, I respond, I go when I can. Whereby we have dedicated administrators in our schools that are responsible for operations. We work in tandem. And so that communication will either come via the school custodian who arrives in the building at 6 a.m. They will communicate with their administrator, or in some instances they communicate directly with me. But where we're able to be preemptive and avoid having to shut school down or to provide late notification to families, we do that. What happened at A&T happened mid-morning, and we really were working through the problems after we got the first report of students feeling cold or teachers feeling cold. We tried every effort we could to continue school in session. No one wants for children to go home, but our intent was to ensure that the school was warm. So that's essentially our process. There are dedicated administrators in each of the buildings that work in tandem with my department, and we keep each other informed.
Okay. Thank you.
Any questions on the board? Ms. Venable, thank you
Thank
for
you.
bringing this information to us on some most
Yes,
important
ma'am.
topics. So,
Thank you.
thank you.
Board President, next, under the report of the superintendent, we have several resolutions for you to consider this evening, starting with that of dedication and recognition of someone near and dear to the district, Mr. James Smythe. So our Executive Director of Community Schools is going to read that resolution for us.
Good evening, board members,
Good evening.
Madam Superintendent, and members of the community. I wanted to read this first resolution, a resolution in support of acknowledging the educational legacy of James Smythe. The Southfield Board of Education hereby resolves, let it be known that it is with a strong sense of admiration for all of the many years of service James Jim Irving Smythe gave to the people of Southfield and its students, as that we salute Jim Smythe for his hard work, professionalism, and dedication displayed during his 26-year career with the Southfield Public School District. We are honored and proud to recognize the loyalty and devotion to educational excellence and public service he exemplified every day. Our community, its schools, and its students have benefited from his service and will continue to do so for years to come. Whereas James Jim Irving Smythe, age 88 of Lathrop Village, passed away Saturday, January 1st, 2022 at Ascension Providence Hospital Southfield campus. He was born June 9th, 1933 in Detroit to James and Marie Smythe. Whereas James grew up in Southwest Detroit and graduated from Holy Redeemer High School, he met Mary Ann at Michigan Normal College, now Eastern Michigan University, in February 1953, and they married in Ypsilanti later that year. On December 7th, 1953, he joined the Army and was honorably discharged after his service. Whereas Jim was a teacher before becoming the beloved principal of Southfield Lathrop High School for 26 years. For his whole life, he couldn't go out anywhere without running into a former coworker or student with happy memories of his time at SL. Whereas after retirement, Jim continued to stay busy and connected with his many friends and family. He participated in golf groups and bridge clubs, even continuing to play online throughout the pandemic. He was a kind, outgoing person who was loved by all who knew him. Whereas he is survived by his wife of 68 years, Mary Ann, whom he married September 5th, 1953 in Ypsilanti, children Mark, Lori Smith, Kim Patrick Daniels, and Natalie Tim Bowen, sisters Sharon Tom Larkin, Christine Wiley Zigraff, and Corrine Michael Lissandrello, grandchildren Nick, Dan, Colleen, Jay, Amy, and Scott, grandchildren Lauren, Emily, Shane, Barrett, Lily, Grady, Dresden, and Wesley, and many loving family, friends, students, and colleagues. He was preceded in death by his parents and grandson Matthew. Now, therefore, be it resolved that the Southfield Public School District's Board of Education thanks Jim Smythe for passing on his legacy of commitment and professionalism. The Southfield Board of Education appreciates the dedication and belief in the district's students that have marked all elements of his work. There can be little doubt that the record of this outstanding educator will continue to reap rewards for the students and residents of Southfield for years to come. Be it further resolved that the district will provide an original copy of this resolution to the family of Jim Smythe and place a copy in the permanent records of the Southfield Board of Education in commemoration of the life and legacy of Jim Smythe.
Thank you, Mr. Jackson. Madam President, if you would, please consider a motion to accept the resolution as stated by Mr. Jackson.
Open and approve a motion for honoring James Jim Smythe.
Support.
Any discussion? Board Secretary, please call for the vote.
Trustee Hicks?
Yes.
Trustee Joyce?
Yes.
Trustee Bland?
Yes.
Trustee Rice?
Yes.
Trustee Ware Duvall? Myself, yes, unanimous.
Thank you, Madam President. And just to note that the circular driveway, the semicircular driveway in front of the now University High School Academy is named after Mr. Smythe, and despite whatever may become of that physical structure, we will continue to carry on his legacy with the name of that semicircular driveway. All right. Next, we have a resolution, secure firearm storage, which is Resolution 6044. Again, will be read by Mr. James Jackson.
Resolution in support of secure firearm storage. The Southfield Board of Education hereby resolves. Let it be known that there has been an escalation in firearm incidents in the United States. This issue is of great concern to the people of Southfield and its students. Our community, its students, and its schools and its students must be committed to responsible firearm ownership, including secure storage of all firearms within a household. Whereas, evidence strongly suggests that secure firearm storage is an essential component to any effective strategy to keep schools and students safe. Whereas, an estimated 5.4 million American children live in households with at least one loaded, unlocked firearm. Whereas every year, nearly 350 children under the age of 18 unintentionally shoot themselves or someone else. That's roughly one unintentional shooting per year, and 70% of these incidents take place inside a home. Whereas another 1,200 students and teens die by gun suicide each year, most often using guns belonging to a family member. Whereas in incidents of gun violence on school grounds, 75% of active shooters are current students or recent graduates, and up to 80% of shooters under the age of 18 obtain their guns from their own home or relative's home or friends. Whereas research shows that secure firearm storage practices are associated with up to an 85% reduction in the risk of unintentional firearm injuries among students and teens. Whereas the U.S. Secret Service National Threat Assessment Center recommends the importance of appropriate storage of weapons because many school attackers use firearms acquired from their homes. Whereas across the country, lawmakers, community members, and local leaders are working together to implement public awareness campaigns such as the Be Smart program, which is endorsed by the National PTA and which encourages secure gun storage practices and highlights the public safety risk of unsecured guns. Whereas school districts across the country have begun to proactively send materials home to parents and guardians, informing them of applicable firearm storage laws and firearm secure storage best practices. Whereas keeping students, teachers, and staff safe from the threat of gun violence should be the responsibility of all adult stakeholders at each of our school sites. Whereas in order to continue with preventive measures to increase student and school safety, we must act now. Now, therefore, be it resolved that the Southfield Board of Education directs the superintendent and staff to update the student handbook to include information about the secure storage of firearms. Be it further resolved that the Southfield Board of Education directs the superintendent to create an appropriate letter in English and other relevant languages to parents and guardians that explains the importance of secure gun storage to protect minors from accessing irresponsibly stored guns. Be it further resolved that the Southfield Board of Education and the superintendent will continue to work with local law enforcement agencies, health agencies, and nonprofits to collaborate and increase efforts to inform district parents about secure storage of firearms in their homes.
Madam President, we ask that you consider a motion to adopt the resolution as stated by Mr. Jackson, and it's probably one of the few resolutions that you will find where we are asking to give ourselves more work to do. But this matter is so important to not only us, but our community as a whole, that this has become a priority for this administration. And we will have a revised emergency operations plan ready for your review no later than July 1. And that is with the intent to have everyone in our district trained on all of the most recent policies, protocols, and procedures prior to our babies returning back in the fall of the 22-23 school year.
Motion to open and approve report 6044, secure firearm storage.
So moved.
Support.
Motion's been moved and supported. Any discussion? Board Secretary, call for the vote, please.
Trustee Joyce?
Yes.
Trustee Hicks?
Yes.
Trustee Bland?
Yes.
Trustee Rice?
Yes.
Myself, yes. Unanimous.
Thank you for your consideration. Next, while we have Dr. Freeman coming up to read the resolution in support of IDEA funding, I will give you some background. You heard Trustee Hicks so eloquently state that he had an opportunity during the time with the senators to talk about the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act, and we know that since its inception, this has not been a fully funded bill. We have all of the data points to take with us to DC, and the reason I highlight that is because I, along with Dr. Freeman, have been invited to go speak with the congressional delegation, along with others from Oakland County, on behalf of full funding for this IDEA. That being said, this is probably the one and only opportunity that we may have in our lifetime because of the additional monies that are available to get this fully funded. So we ask again that our parents reach out to the appropriate individuals to garner their support for this funding, and we look forward to going and having that conversation with them next month. For our audience, I do apologize in advance. On March 8th for that board meeting, I will not be here in attendance because I will be there in DC. advocating for full funding for our young people. So Dr. Freeman, if you would, please read the resolution in support of IDEA.
Thank you. Good evening, Board. Good evening, Dr. Green, as well as our community members. Southfield Public Schools resolution in support of the IDEA Full Funding Act. Whereas the Southfield Public School District recognizes the need for a strong investment in the Individuals with Disabilities Educational Act, IDEA. And whereas the Individuals with Disabilities Educational Act was first enacted in 1975 to help ensure that all students with disabilities will have access to a free, appropriate public education. And whereas with the enactment of IDEA, the United States Congress committed to fund up to 40% of the additional cost of special education, thereby promising to provide up to 40% of the national average per pupil expenditure, which is currently estimated at $13,828 by the U.S. Department of Education. And whereas since IDEA enacted more than 45 years ago, the current federal investment in IDEA is less than 14%. And whereas the Southfield Public School District and many other public school districts throughout the United States educate a growing number of children with disabilities that is now more than 7 million. And whereas our nation's school districts face an increased demand for greater resources to fulfill the needs of students under IDEA, including those for students affected by multiple disabilities whose individual education plans require more resources. And whereas with each increase in the IDEA child count, the Southfield Board of Education and others throughout the country continue to adjust their budgets to accommodate this increased need and ensure that each child educated through IDEA receives the appropriate supports, with some school districts dedicating 40% or more of their general education budgets to special education services. And be it resolved that the Southfield Board of Education supports the IDEA Full Funding Act that will help strengthen the federal investment in special education by authorizing a 10-year plan to fully fund the federal share of IDEA. And be it resolved that the Southfield Board of Education urges Congress strong bipartisan support for the passage of the IDEA Full Funding Act. And now, therefore, be it resolved that the Southfield Board of Education remains committed to providing students with disabilities and their families the supports they need and acknowledges the intergovernmental partnership among the local, state, and federal levels of government critical to the shared investment in our children. Thank you.
Madam President, I ask that you consider entertaining a motion to support the resolution for full funding of IDEA.
Motion to open and approve Report 6045, Resolution in support of IDEA Full Funding Act.
So moved.
Support.
Motion has been moved and supported. Any discussion?
Through the chair, Dr. Freeman, it was just a pleasure hearing you read that. You read it with such conviction, so thank you for that.
It is music to my ears.
And to put emphasis on the statement that they promised 40% 45 years ago, and 45 years later, we are only receiving 14%, it's criminal. It's criminal.
For second. Call for the vote, please.
Trustee Bland?
Yes.
Trustee Hicks?
Yes.
Trustee Joyce?
Yes.
Trustee Rice?
Yes.
Myself, yes, unanimous.
Thank you.
Motion carries.
Thank you, Dr. Freeman. That is all that we have for the report of the superintendent.
Thank you, Dr. Green. Move on to action items. Motion to open and approve the consent agenda.
So moved.
Support.
It's been moved and supported. Any discussion? Board Secretary, please call for the vote. Trustee Bland?
Yes.
Trustee Hicks?
Yes.
Trustee Rice?
Yes.
Trustee Joyce?
Yes.
Myself, yes. Unanimous.
Before we move to report 6046 for the personnel action report, we have a personnel on here with a deceased, and we would like to ask for a special moment of silence. I'm going to read the person's name. You can?
You can.
Okay. Patrice Kilgore. May we have a moment of silence from Ms. Kilgore? Amen.
Board President, if I may, ask that we all keep the Kilgore family in our thoughts. Ms. Kilgore did make her transition, and having been not only an employee of the district, but a parent of our district, and only 12 days after losing her husband. So this family lost both of their parents within a matter of 2 weeks. So please keep them lifted as they transition through this very difficult time.
Through the chair,
Trustee Bland.
I would also like to offer my condolences to Dr. Freeman and the Kennedy Learning Center family. I know what a loss that was for you all, and Ms. Kilgore was definitely a kind spirit and always welcomed everyone with a smile. So you have our full condolences, and please thank her family for her service to our district.
Thank you. Okay. We'll now move to motion to open and approve report 6046 personnel action report.
So move.
Support.
It's been moved and supported. Any discussion? Board Secretary, please call for the vote.
Trustee Hicks?
Yes.
Trustee Bland?
Yes.
Trustee Joyce?
Yes.
Trustee Rice?
Yes.
Myself, yes. Unanimous.
I'm sure I have in my packet. I'm looking for report 6040. All right. Motion to open and approve report 6047 for the graduation contract agreement. You should have a,
You have it as a standalone document, trustees.
Second?
it's been moved and supported. Any discussion? Dr. Green, can you just kind of give us an overview?
I can walk you through that. This is a venue rental agreement with the Aretha Franklin Amphitheater. I know that we've had years of conversation since I've been here relative to where we host the graduation events, the cost associated, and the timeliness of the events. I will say that the feedback that we received this past school year, being the class of 2021, was very positive in some of the changes that were made by the Aretha Franklin Amphitheater and the Wright Productions. We contemplated a number of different venues and found many challenges along the way. The most concerning was that of many have contracts with promoters, and there was language in many of their contracts which stipulated if a national act, recording act, performers, and the like chose to come to their venue, they could cancel our graduation up to 3 days prior to. We did not want our families to be traumatized by the cancellation or relocation of graduation due to an artist coming to perform at that venue. So we did decide to continue the conversation with the Aretha Franklin Amphitheater and the Wright Productions. Mr. James Jackson is the district point of contact for this agreement, and he will be on site to ensure that it moves just as smoothly, if not more smoothly, than it did last year. The date for the graduation, I know that's what our young people are waiting to hear, is Saturday, June 4th, 2022.
Thank you, Dr. Green.
Yeah, so
Okay.
being that said, all what you just said, is there any other place that we could consider in the future?
We can't build one based on the bond,
Okay.
but we will continue looking.
Okay.
That is something that's never stopped. We've had some challenges with faith-based organizations and the separation of church and state, and even the different religious symbols that some places have on their walls. We've had some challenges with travel. With inflation, the amphitheater that we looked into, I think it was $80,000. So comparatively speaking, it is twice the amount of more than twice the amount that we would be paying for the Aretha Franklin Amphitheater. So the quest to find another venue continues. Again, that's on our Executive Director of Community Schools and all who serve Southfield Public Schools. We're always looking, and we are open to suggestions. If our families have suggestions of places that we may not know exist, we're open to those as well. But we have to lock in something for our students. They deserve it. The families are anxious and anticipating a date. We're also looking to have live streaming comparable to what we had last year to ensure that family members not able to come to Detroit or to Southfield or the Michigan area are still able to engage and watch their scholar walk across the stage.
So with the live streaming, how did that go? Did that go quite well?
I was on the stage with you. From a technical standpoint, it went off without a hitch. I'm not sure how many people actually tuned in, and so that's why I said I'm not quite sure, because from our perspective, it went off well. The other thing that we did to ensure that our families had this, to memorialize the event, we also had M1 Studios go down. So we did double, if you will. We had the live streaming with Aretha Franklin, and we had our very own M1 Studios go down. So I don't have the data to support how many watched it via our streaming or via what we had with Aretha Franklin. I just don't know.
Any further discussion?
Through the chair,
Board Secretary?
I will say that I did see the video in snippets from last year, and I thought it was of quality. It was nice to see it in archive. So with that said, it was good to see it.
Okay.
Board Secretary, call for the vote.
Trustee Joyce?
Yes.
Trustee Hicks?
Yes.
Trustee Rice?
Yes.
Trustee Bland?
Yes.
Myself, yes, unanimous.
Motion carries.
Okay.
We will get that data point from this year, now that we know that's something we're interested in seeing. Very good lift.
Moving on to informational items. I believe we have 4 informational items, and
We
all
do.
of them are action items for our next special board meeting.
Yes, we are trying to work diligently to get back to our regular cadence where we bring you things for information and then bring them back to you for the next meeting for that of action. So, Board President, Report 6048 is the ProCare contract. So I'm going to ask Dr. Freeman to come back and share with us the need for us to continue our relationship with ProCare.
Thank you again to the board, Dr. Green, and the community. We have had a long-standing partnership with ProCare, and they have been able to help us to secure special areas in terms of team members when we are unable to find candidates. So we have used them in the past. They have been able to secure speech pathologists as well as social workers, and now we are in desperate need of a few good paraprofessionals. We have diligently tried to recruit, been working in partnership with talent management, and we have just been unable to secure paraprofessionals. And again, we want to make sure that students have the right support, and ProCare has been able to secure a few candidates for us. So we're hoping to continue this partnership with them as they assist us in getting candidates in the door.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Simmons. Board, any inquiry?
No
Thank you.
questions. Thank you, Dr. Freeman.
Thank you. Thank you.
The next report is 6049, Schools of Choice 105 and 105C. Trustees, you may recall, for the last several years, we've had Schools of Choice 105, which affords us an opportunity to allow students from within Oakland County in grades K through 9 to enroll in the Southfield Public School District if they so choose. 105C affords us an opportunity to afford students from contiguous counties to enroll in our school district if you so choose. We limited that to grades K through 3, specifically for that of our GSRP and Head Start families that we educate in the Early Childhood Center, to afford them the opportunity to stay with us as Southfield Public School scholars throughout their K-12 experience. We are asking that you consider adopting this resolution for the 2022-2023 school year. And as many have already lifted to my attention, our neighboring districts do have their information out. We have a very robust marketing plan that we plan to share not only with you, but with our entire community, to let them know the greatness happening here in Southfield Public Schools. As Secretary Ware Duval mentioned, our new website does show some of the videos and shows our scholars in action. So I'm very proud of the work that our young people are doing. We just need to do a better job of letting everyone else know how great our scholars are and how great our staff is in educating our young people for their career of choice moving forward. So that is something that we ask you to consider for action at the next meeting. The next report is Report 60-50, Champions Extension. I'm not sure if Ms. Venable or Mr. Ingram wish to speak to that. Ms. Venable, did you wish to speak to that, our extension, or Mr. Ingram, do you wish to speak to that in regard to keeping our services available to our families for before care as well as after care? And then unfortunately, when we had to go remote, they were there for our families as well. So if there are any questions, Mr. Ingram, did I miss anything?
No, good evening, community. Just our contract with Champions is annual, so we just need to renew it in order to ensure we have adequate child care throughout the district.
And to Vice President Bland's point earlier, when we have to go remote or close school, our champion partners have always been there for us to provide services for our families that were in need, most recently at the cost of $44 per day, and that was for a 12-hour day. So if you put things in perspective, it's $2 an hour or less. So thank you, sir.
Okay, thank you.
The last one is that of Payne Landscape, and I will speak to that. A couple years ago, we, through your grace, did onboard a new landscaping company, and I will say that was right before we had the outside drive-through graduation, and everything was in turmoil. That company came in and they did an amazing job with bringing our curb appeal back to what it should be. And as Ms. Paulette, who's been with us for a long time, stated, she didn't even know that some of the bushes were actually bushes because they had no shape over the years. So I will say that they've done a great job for us throughout this entire pandemic, and we ask that we continue that partnership moving forward because they have made Southfield Public Schools their showplace for curb appeal.
Yeah, Dr. Green, this is for multiple years.
That is for, I believe, a 2-year. 3? 3 years. Let's hold on to them. And they do, it's also important to note, because you have adopted in the policy that we consider local and minority contractors, and they do qualify for both. So that's something that I wanted to highlight as well. Lastly, information items, you had forwarded to you all of the monthly financial expenditures as well as the bill disbursement, so I'm not sure if you have any questions or have had an opportunity to go through all of those documents. There were a significant amount of those documents emailed to you for support, and both Mr. Thomas Harrell and Mr. Mark Ingram are here if you have any questions regarding those items.
Hearing none, we will move to public participation.
We do have two this evening.
If you wish to address the board regarding a school-related issue that has not yet been resolved by school administration, please submit a comment card immediately. Comments are limited to 3 minutes per individual. As a matter of fairness, speakers with complaints against individuals are asked not to mention any persons by name. Complaints concerning employees pursuant to Board Policy 9130 should be brought to the attention of school principals or other administrators before coming to the Board of Education. Your cooperation is appreciated. Moshe Goldberg.
Thank you once again, and welcome the new president and vice president. And I just heard from James, our public relations, that there is going to be a meeting held regarding the properties. So I understand from the bonds and all this that they're moving along with the greater vision to take care of the future of the district. However, you know, we just, for a long time, we've been trying to speak to the board, and obviously there was a pandemic and all these things, and we're thankful that you're taking care of the district's business. We're just looking forward to sitting together, and you should understand exactly what we plan on doing with Grace Letterly. You should feel comfortable, and that, you know, and just wanted to thank you. It's been a couple of years, and the election's coming up, and people were in the community started telling me we should start getting people on the board. I said, no, we're going to work with this board. And just wanted to share that with you. Thank you.
Appreciate that. Thank you, Mr. Goldberg. Next up. Susan Yekesenia.
Good evening to the board, the administration. I'm just here to say thank you for the passage of the resolution for secure gun storage. This has been a passion of mine for the last several years. I have two daughters that graduated from Southfield High School. My sister graduated from Southfield High School. Believe me, living in Southfield was not like this 35 years ago when I first moved here. And when I say like this, I mean the concern, the fear that many parents have sending their children to school and having to have lockdowns in the classroom and having to be wondering about gun violence. So I really appreciate the efforts of the board, of Superintendent Green, Ms. Gardner and Mr. Jackson, who have helped to do something to take a step which not only adds more work to you, but I think will give parents in this district a feeling of security that we are working toward making this a safer district for the students, for the teachers, and even for the residents. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Daryl Buchanan.
Good evening, board.
Good evening.
Dr. Green, boss, how you doing? And the community. My name is Daryl Buchanan. I live at 16445 New Jersey here in Southfield. And I just wanted to have a conversation with the board. I sat in those seats for 10 years. I sat as president for 4 of those 10 years. I know the difficulty of the position that you hold, but I also know the significance of the board, because without a strong board, we will have a weak community. It is your job is actually more important than that of city council. They may call this a lower chamber, but if we don't do our jobs, city council has nothing else to do. Communities that fail at the board table. In my tenure as Michigan Caucus of Black School Board members, I saw several districts fail, taken over by emergency management. I saw several communities go into bankruptcy as a result of that, and it all started with the school district. People don't move to districts because of garbage pickup and fire service and things of that nature. They come to educate their children. And I want you all to understand that the people that you really represent don't vote. The people that you represent are our future, and we entrust that care to this board on a daily basis. So please, please understand the importance of that role. Not that you're not. I just want to kind of have a conversation and maybe a little pep talk, okay? Because I know how much drudgery there is in serving. It's the most thankless job in public service to be on the school board, okay? But it's also the most gratifying work that you can do in your life. And when you look back at your service on the board, hopefully you'll be able to look back at it fondly, because the work that you do now is truly God's work. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Buchanan. We will move to, for the good of the order. Hearing none, we'll move to future meetings. February 15th, 2022 is our special board meeting at 6 p.m. March 8th will be our regular board meeting at 7 p.m. On March 14th, we have a joint meeting with the Lathrop Village City Council over at the Southfield High School for A&T Field House at 6:30. And then we have our special board meeting on March 22nd, 2022 at 6 p.m. Meeting is adjourned.